more security tips to keep you safe. This is MacVoices. Today's MacVoices is supported by Quip, better oral health made simple. Visit getquip.com/MacVoices to get your first refill free. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, our discussion of cybersecurity topics for Cybersecurity Awareness Month continues. This time around, we talk about how what you do could affect others and why it's so important for you to be responsible to help protect your friends and associates. We also touch on software updates, credit card and debit card usage, and more. Let's go back and let the panel do the talking. Kelly, you just brought up Facebook, and you know, we don't want to beat on Facebook, okay? But I just got I got a message, you know, from a friend that just made one of those like, this doesn't make any sense. I don't understand. Why is she asking me that? And then I saw her post in her feed, I've been hacked. Don't respond to any messages. And it's like, I so badly wanted to be, that guy and say, did you have two-factor authentication turned on? Or was your password 1234? Because if it was, then you've put me in danger, and, you should be taken out behind the woodshed. I mean, that just doesn't make, yes, I'm a big believer in corporal punishment, preferably with a crowbar.
That escalated quickly.
Yeah, well, it does, because, unfortunately, what we're talking about we're talking about my security and your security, and, the security of everybody around you, not just your personal security that you're compromising. Compromise away if you want, but don't mess with mine by doing stupid things.
Yeah. Like all the people who, and I think this is still a thing, like Facebook really wants you to sync all the contacts in your phone to Facebook. Yes. And so, so possibly a bunch of people have my phone number in their phones, and, and if they get hacked now, somebody has my phone number, and whatever other information about me, like if I gave them my birthday, there's another one, my physical my mailing address, there's another one. And if you get compromised, you have all of those, like all of that data, which is sort of not yours to share, is now compromised. And, and that's my data. So Chuck, like, I agree with you. I was sort of making a joke about it because you went straight to crowbar. That's all. But it's serious, and it's important, and it's a thing that I think doesn't always get considered. And, when I talk to people about security, the example I always use about having unique passwords is LinkedIn. Like if somebody gets my LinkedIn password, because this was before they got hacked again. If somebody gets my LinkedIn password, they can log in and update my resume. Oh no, but if I'm using the same password on LinkedIn, that I'm using on Amazon, now you have my credit card, my other credit card, my other credit card, couple of shipping addresses, names and addresses for people in my family, birthdays for people, whether, in my house or in other places, or maybe it's the same as my Apple ID. And now you have, all the data that I have stored under my Apple ID, and so like, that's a thing that escalates really quickly as well. And that's part of why I think the two-factor stuff needs to be better explained. And I think it needs to be more easily utilized. And it needs to be very obvious if you are a service that offers it, that that's a thing that needs to happen, because it's important and it's easy. Like two-factor is one of the easiest things that you can do to lock everything down, make it more secure, make it something easier. YubiKey has now biometric. It's basically like a Touch ID hardware key. So you stick your thumb on it and you poke it in the side of your computer and you're done. And they have them that work with your phone, like with a lightning port, to make sure that to make sure that the thing, that it's as easy as possible. Like when people were concerned about being in offices, like, that sort of stuff, like you can keep people from shoulder surfing by using Touch ID, that kind of thing. Like that's part of where I like that Apple has sort of pushed towards some of these things more easily. Like you kind of have to have two-factor on your Apple ID now and stuff like that. It's important and it's easy.
And I think that's something where like, I think a lot of stuff is still, or a lot of like regulations are probably still missing. I can tell you I think in Germany, probably in the rest of Europe as well, no bank is allowed to not have two-factor authentication as a default, like enabled as a default as of last year. They have to have it.
Nice.
And I mean, it totally makes sense. Like it was an option before, like optional, a lot of banks did it, but it wasn't mandatory. And I think in like banks and anything, like Amazon, honestly, anything that is high risk, that should be the default. It's on by default. There is no other way.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say who, but someone just put in our private chat, but it makes it so much more annoying to log into someone's Pokemon account to catch Larvitar or whatever for them. Now, I'm not going to say who that was, but I'll let you draw your own conclusion.
I'm going to point out it was not the person who has Pokemon in their background. I'm just going to say that and leave it at that.
Okay. Yeah, we'll leave that alone. I guess the bottom line is if you lock your door at night, then there are some of these things you should be taking seriously. And two-factor authentication, the passwords, I mean, we beat the passwords to death, but for heaven's sake, folks, please go and use a password manager. We don't care which one, but and do not reuse passwords. That's another big one. I personally, I don't like, I do it on a couple sites, but I don't like to leave my credit card numbers with vendors. I just don't think that's a good practice. I use VPNs regularly anytime I'm out in any Wi-Fi that I don't know, and sometimes Wi-Fi that I do know, because it's not costing me anything. Just hit the little button, let it secure you, and keep on going. Yeah. The virus software we talked about a lot. That may be a matter of personal taste and what systems you're running. What am I missing, guys? For heaven's sake, like David said, don't answer those phone calls. Don't answer those flashing messages. Don't believe if the website tells you that you've been hacked. And and I think, was it Kelly? You said let me give you the Visa number to get started, because all that's going to do is just get worse. By the moment.
Also, don't answer like social engineering questions on Facebook. Like those questions, like what is the city you were born in? Stuff like that.
Or answer them but wrong and save it in your password manager. Because this is the thing that I think, like, this is the thing that because I give talks about security regularly at my day job to people, like, we're rolling out a password manager. Here's why that matters. Here's what, here's like what you need to know about why this is a big deal. Or two-factor, if I'm helping people implement two-factor across the organization. And one of the things I tell people all the time is no one's going to call you and check.
No,
like no one's going to
totally lie.
Like once I fill out the whole form for the account, like 20 minutes later, my phone's not going to ring and be like, hello. And then go, yeah, Kelly, we know that the city you were born in was not poster desktop pencil case. So you need to give us the right answer. Like, no. They don't care. Yeah. The whole reason that all started was because, like, the name of your second grade teacher is never going to change. And so asking you for the name of your second grade teacher is going to always give you the answer. And they're sort of banking on the fact that no one else is going to know who your second grade teacher was. But that was in the days before you could continually have conversations with your second grade teacher on the book base. So there's a thing like that sort of security measure was a thing that was good way before everybody was free and breezy with putting all their information out on social media and on their websites and things like that. So like, they're not going to check, like, and the thing is, like, it sometimes is sort of entertaining when that happens, because I have a question like that on my insurance. There's like a security question. So whenever I call them, they have to ask me for the answer. And so I give them the answer, which is words, and I give them like poster desktop pencil case 6, and it's some question like, who was your second grade teacher? And I give them that. And then they're like, wow. And I'm like, yeah, I work in security. And they're like, oh. And like one person said, I never thought about doing that. And I'm like, nobody checks. And they were like, oh my God, I totally didn't, like, that thought never occurred to me. Like, of course you're just going to give the right answer to a question like that about yourself. So don't, and know that nobody's going to verify that.
No.
Yeah.
You can lie. You can generate another password for that. If you want.
Anything I said for my second grade teacher would, I have no idea who that was.
Same.
Chuck, I want to back up on something you said for a second. If I heard it right, did you say that if you're like out using Wi-Fi somewhere and you're going to use your credit card, then you want to go through a VPN?
I don't, not necessarily for my credit card. I try to avoid that, but just regular surfing or email or whatever. I want to go through a VPN.
Same.
Why did you specify credit card, Jim?
Well, I thought that's what you said, but I guess I misheard. Because, if a site is using SSL, as they better be if you're doing that, then it's already encrypted, so it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, yes and no. There's still a possibility of a man-in-the-middle attack. Like, I could set that up myself. Like, it's fairly easy, depending on the bank and the website.
Then you could go in and check the certificate on your browser, and
but who does that?
Yeah, or you can just
that would be better. I think that would be a better protection than using a VPN.
There's also, these days, like privacy.com virtual credit cards that you can basically use one time. Like for one site, you can even set the amount that site can charge you for and stuff like that.
What really gives me the heebie-jeebies on credit cards is giving them to a waiter at a restaurant.
Yes.
Yeah. That's why the pay at the table things, I actually like them for that reason.
But I've never seen
standard
that
here. So.
I was going to say Patrice might not even know about giving.
No, I do.
Giving it to, because that's a kind of an American thing, I think.
Yeah, I can tell you a funny story about that. I was in Hawaii at a small restaurant, and I was using my, I think at that point, German credit card. And it asked for a PIN, and they didn't even know. The terminal was somewhere behind the counter, and I had to go there, and they weren't set up for that at all. They didn't at first know what to do. Yeah. So
I was gonna say Andrew isn't here, and so I feel compelled to point out privacy.com gives you these disposable numbers that you can spin up, so you can have Chuck, you could have a credit card dedicated just to Amazon, and then a different credit card number just for iTunes, and then all the different places, and you can put limits on them. So this card can never charge more than $20, for the iTunes store or whatever, and things like that. And so, and then they're disposable, and you can turn them off, and that makes them very easy to use as well. And I know Andrew really likes privacy.com, so I was going to say he's not here, so I feel like we have to.
You can have one for Netflix, for example, and it can exactly charge whatever Netflix charges and not a cent more. Yeah.
So if somebody hacks into your Netflix account and gets your payment information, that's on them. The most they're ever going to get away with is $8 or whatever.
Yeah, and this is not exactly cybersecurity, but you brought it up, Kelly, and so I just cannot resist. Please do not use a debit card for anything other than withdrawing cash.
Amen to that.
Please, because all you're doing is you're opening up your entire bank balance to be hacked. And at least if you have a credit card especially from a major bank, you've got the backing of that bank, you've got their policies that will protect you, and usually if you have liability, your liability is very limited. Brittany, I see you raising a finger.
What about if you use your debit card with Apple Pay?
I still don't like to use my debit card for anything other than going into an ATM that I've grabbed the front of and tried to pull off.
Chuck, I don't even have a debit card that I know where it is or what the PIN is. I don't have one. I've not convinced my life partner to get a credit card, however.
Well,
I will say if there's Apple Pay, you're using the Apple Pay.
I will talk to your heterosexual life mate after the show.
Thank you.
Okay.
Today's Mac Voices is supported by Quip. Better oral health made simple. Visit getquip.com/MacVoices to get your first refill free. Quip is how you can start every day just a little bit better by being sure that you're taking care of your oral health. Quip is an electric toothbrush that not only improves your twice daily brushing, but also gives you the option to upgrade your Quip with a new smart motor that will track and improve your brushing with the free Quip iPhone app, and also earn amazing rewards for Quip and their partners. Rewards like free refills, products, Target gift cards, and more. Setting up the Quip electric toothbrush is easy. Just download the Quip app to your iPhone and turn on your Quip. A few quick clicks later, and they are paired and ready for your first Quip experience. 30-second pulses let you know when to move from one part of your mouth to the next, and when your dentist-recommended 2-minute brushing is up. If you go to getquip.com/MacVoices right now, you'll get your first refill free. That's your first refill free at getquip.com/MacVoices. And that's spelled get, G-E-T, quip, QUIP.com/MacVoices. Quip, the Good Habits Company. Thanks to Quip for their support of MacVoices. Okay, well, thank you for revealing Brittany's
so on.
David.
Patrice, that advice that Chuck gave, does that also apply where you are? I had a conversation on Twitter recently about this, and I was saying exactly what Chuck just said. And then this person was in another country, and they said, actually, that's not true here. It's better to use a debit card. And there's, the protections are actually different in different countries for debit cards versus credit cards.
So the credit card that exists in the US does not technically exist in a lot of other places. Like here in Europe, most what people call credit cards here are actually just debit cards. They have a credit card number just like in the US, but they're really just debit cards. There are a few banks that do like proper debit cards, like how they're in the US, but it's rare. So the protections here are different, yes. But yeah, it just doesn't exist. Like when I use my credit card in air quotes, it goes to my bank account directly.
So if you don't live in the US, if you're a listener not in the US, check your local region.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it doesn't matter whether I think that the point is more check what you're doing and make sure that the proper protections are in place, whatever it is called. It doesn't matter what it's called.
Right.
It's about the protections.
Right. But there, I know there are a lot of people in the United States that just use debit cards everywhere. And I always tell them stop doing that. And they usually don't believe me. But
well, and it's awareness, because there's a lot less protection.
Right.
If somebody gets a hold of your debit card number and goes and spends money on it, there's a lot less that you can do in that case, because it's sort of like with your credit card, it's sort of theoretical until the actual charge gets processed. And that means that your Chase Manhattan or your Goldman Sachs or whoever, Capital One, whoever, like they have the opportunity to go, okay, that was fraud.
Right.
And, make that, they can yeet that back right out into the ocean. And, that's not, and it's not your problem anymore.
Right.
And when it's your bank account, that's a completely different set of circumstances that you have to worry about in most places. And the laws that govern it are different. And it's handy to have that debit card because you can swipe at any place that'll take something with a mag stripe and a 16-digit number. But the outcome of that is a very, very different situation dependent, if somebody nefarious gets a hold of it. So that's the part that's hard to, that sometimes can be hard to track.
And on the Apple Card, for example, the magnetic stripe is actually disabled by default. You have to enable it if you want to use it, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
And Chuck, I would say for the ATM, not only would I want to check, that the thing hasn't got a fake front on it, but, I wouldn't use one that wasn't part of a bank building, and preferably inside the building if possible.
Yeah, those third-party ATMs avoid.
Yeah, but even bank ATMs, that people have been known to put false fronts on them, even though they're attached to the bank building. Yeah, and that's a huge. I went to a conference talk about it once, and I was amazed. It's like tens of billions of dollars of fraud, ATM fraud every year. Humongous.
Yeah. And what's great about my bank is I put if I do, like you said, putting your debit card in Apple Wallet, I can go up to the ATM, put my Apple Watch up, and it scans everything. I'm not even putting my card in to take that chance.
Yeah. And in this case, like Apple Pay is better because it's using a transaction number. So even if someone got that number, they couldn't do much with it.
Right. And that's the part I think, like, we're talking about like information and being informed. That's where Security Friday came from. And that's the thing I think sometimes doesn't get described clearly. And that is like the credit card number in your Apple Wallet for any of your credit cards is not the number that's on the piece of plastic in your wallet, in your actual wallet. They are not the same number. And if somebody were to get that number that's in the credit card, on your credit card, air quotes, on your phone, again, air quotes, like in that wallet, like that number isn't even going to work for anything because it takes the number and an authentication token because, your watch got unlocked by you at some point, or you paid with your passcode or your Face ID or something if you bonk your phone on the thing. And there's another piece of the token, which is like the date and timestamp and the amount that was paid and like where you are and all of that. And if somebody were to get the number that goes to that transaction, it's not going to do them any good.
There's also a device. There's also a hardware device token.
Yeah.
So you couldn't even take it. You couldn't even take it to another phone.
Not to mention that contactless payment only works within about 4 inches of the terminal. So if somebody's trying to get in between you and the terminal to sniff that credit card number, you're probably going to notice. And so like that too, like there's so much stuff that goes into making that number secure. Like it actually, to me, feels way safer to do that than to take out the card that has the number on it and my signature and the CVV and wave that around as I'm trying to feed it to the terminal or whatever. Like, this, I take my arm and I go boop and it's done. And then I leave and it's fantastic. And it feels for a second like I live in the future. And that part is what makes it awesome. And so like I tell people all the time and they go, oh, I don't want to carry my credit card around on my phone. I'm like, well, you're actually not. It's a pretend number. And, and if it makes you uncomfortable, remove it and then re-add it if you think something funny happened. And then you'll get a whole new fake number that you can use as your pretend credit card to go buy stuff other places. And, and it kind of feels like you live in the future. And it's great.
I wonder why Apple doesn't market on this. I wonder if the banks don't want them to or something. I mean, it seems like this could be, a huge... It is a huge differentiator for Apple Pay I'm not even sure if the other NFT payment systems have that. I don't think they do.
They do. No, they do. This what Apple is using is actually part of the what is it called EMF, EMT. I don't remember the standard behind it.
I want to say
Apple's,
it's EMF.
Yeah, I think EMF. It's part of the standard. So those transaction numbers are part of the standard.
So Samsung Pay does the same thing.
Yep. Samsung Pay does the same thing. Google Pay.
Google Pay is the same. Yeah,
all the
contactless payment stuff is all the same.
They don't have that.
They do not.
They do not have that. Yes. Yeah.
So I want to wrap this up because we are starting to run over time. I'm going to end with just one last tip, and that is, for heaven's sake, keep your software updated, your system software, and any software that has anything to do with monetary transactions, because that is constantly being updated by most vendors one way or another. Especially if there are any problems. So please do that. We want you to all be safe. We want to see you back here every Tuesday night. And that means that, you have to have money to pay the bills to get the internet access to be able to be here. So it's my self-interest to protect you.
I want to tag on to that if you see that there's a security update for something and the notes for that security update, the more vague they are, the more important it is for you to update. Because if it's a tiny little thing that only happens on a Tuesday when the moon is full, then like they're going to say this fixes a security flaw where somebody can get your password on Tuesdays when the moon is full. If it's a huge security hole and somebody could drive a truck through the middle of your operating system and scoop out all your data and leave with it, they're going to say, it's a security update. It's very important that you install this. They are not going to tell you anything about it. It's not going to be anything where they nail down specifics, not at first, not till like a bunch of people install it. And then they're going to be like, it's a good thing y'all installed that because there was this giant hole somebody could have driven a truck through and scooped up all your data and ran off with it. And like, but they won't tell you about it at the time. So if you get a security update that is very, very light on details, it is very, very important you install it.
Any security update is important.
That's true. But when they're like, this fixes this, the Wi-Fi blinks out on a Saturday afternoon or whatever, like that's a little different magnitude than some of the ones we've seen, particularly lately with Big Sur, a couple of those.
I just don't want anybody to ignore any security updates because really it doesn't matter how big or how small it is. If it's the one that applies to you, if it's your front door that's open, it doesn't matter how many other front doors in your neighborhood are locked. Yours is the one that's open, and that's where they'll drive through.
But it's easy to blow off a vague one, and don't blow off the vague ones at all.
and that cybersecurity or penetration testing 101. Like the first thing you look for is some old software or something unpatched, because if it has a known vulnerability, you're in.
Yep. David, I'll give you the.
I was going to say, Rich F in the chat room just mentioned iOS 15.0.2. That's a prime example. Security update has a bug. Run it.
Yes.
Very important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you. This Craig in the chat room said there's been a lot of good information tonight, and I hope that's the case, because we want to make you all aware of some of this stuff. We know it's not the sexiest topic in the world, but and none of this stuff is. But it's also just so extremely important. And if you are tech savvy, then and you're involved in technology, I hate to say it, but it's one more place that people can take advantage of you. So you need to be out there protecting yourself. Let's go around and find out where we can find everyone when they're not here sharing all this wisdom. And I'm going to flip it upside down this time because I think I went from the top before. So now I'm going to let Brittany go first. Brittany, thank you for being here. What you're speaking at the ADHD conference later this month?
It's at the start of November. And yes, I am.
Okay, great. So we can find you there. Where else can we find you?
Where else you can find me is on Twitter. I'm the ADD Liberator. That is also my YouTube, where I talk about technology and do live weekly reviews with all of the foibles one might expect. And my website is conquer.consulting for all the other stuff I do.
Excellent. Thanks so much for the time, Brittany. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Ms. Kelly, thank you for sharing all your wisdom. Where can folks find you?
Well, you can get more of this sort of wisdom over at the macobserver.com or at macobserver.com, where I do the Daily Observations podcast 5 days a week. And on Fridays, we do Security Friday, where we talk about stuff like this all the time. And the thing I'll point out is that the TDO, as we call it over there, the Daily Observations podcast, maximum about 22 minutes. So we do very small chunks of this stuff, but we tell you about This Week in Data Breaches is a beloved portion of the program. We talk about the things that you need to know. And every week we try to make sure that we have an actionable tip, like the stuff that we're telling you here, to make sure that people are doing what they can to make sure that they are at least informed about what's happening with their data and how to keep it private, and making sure that you know what's going on with your stuff. So that's what we do over there at Daily Observations at macobserver.com. You can find me on the Incomparable Podcast Network, where I have a show called I Want My MCU TV. And I can also be found on other episodes over there. We will be talking about the second season of Ted Lasso on the main show over there very soon, because boy, howdy, do I have thoughts. You can find me on the After Show with Mike Rose at aftershowpodcast.com. We just released a new episode over there. And I'm sure I've done other stuff that I can't think of. I was recently a guest on In Touch with iOS with Dave somebody, I think, is the host of that. And the rest of the time you can find me on Twitter as Verso.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. Patrice, I don't know when you're going to get back, because
next month
you
probably.
You engage in lack of sleep to participate in this. So when you're on vacation, you're always welcome. You're always welcome anytime. But where can folks find you otherwise so that you can actually get some sleep?
I'll be back sometime next month. I think there's a public holiday on a Wednesday at some point, so I'll join you. You can find me every week on Thursdays and Fridays on British Tech Network on the Big Show and the Mac Show. And I want to mention, since next week Monday is a new Apple event, there will be a Apple event poker on Friday on the Mac Show. So, and that's always a lot of fun where we try to predict what's going to happen, and we're usually very, very wrong. So that's going to happen this week. Other than that, everything I'm doing, all the projects and social media links, and if you want to buy me a coffee, you can find all of that on thepatrice.com. And if you want to listen to very interesting people talking about food and just everything that goes with that, like food-related memories, I have an interview podcast called Foodie Flashback at foodieflashback.com, where I have interviewed some of you, but not all of you. So I'll send out some invites.
Great to have you, Patrice. I'm so glad you've been able to join us.
I was very happy to do it.
Jim Ray, where can folks find you?
You can find me at proview.com and also at ProviewJim on Twitter.
Perfect. Thanks for being here as always. Good to have you. Last but absolutely not least, that guy David that Kelly was trying to remember. Mr. Ginsburg, where can folks find you?
Thanks for having me, Chuck. As always, in touch with iOS at intouchwithios.com. Actually, Patrice will be joining me and Jeff this week on the show. I'm looking forward to that. I'm also on the Mac Show on Fridays. I did win the bingo in the last event, so I guess I have to kind of brag about that a little bit. You're also going to find my YouTube channel at youtube.com/DaveG65. And I'm on Twitter at DaveG65. Thanks again.
David, it's poker, not bingo.
Did I say bingo?
You said bingo.
I meant poker. My apologies.
Yeah, poker.
Thank you.
Because they're such similar games.
Yeah, totally.
I can tell you're really good at it.
Yeah. Well, he won, so how you can argue
That's
it.
true. Yeah.
My bad. I get mesmerized.
Hey, I want to thank the chat room. Folks, thank you so much for participating, for being here. We always appreciate it. It's always great to see you. Please come back and join us next Tuesday. The topic obviously will be whatever was announced on Monday at the Big Apple event. We'll be analyzing it and digging through it and deciding what, if anything, we're going to buy. So, Mac Voices Live, Tuesday night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, whatever time that is your time. We will see you right back here on Mac Voices Live on YouTube at youtube.com/MacVoicesTV. As always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.